Japanese government in the Horizon 2020 research program. Keresis is developing the world's first culturally aware robots aimed at assisting and caring for the elderly. Assistive, intelligent robots for older people could relieve pressure in hospitals and care homes as well as improve the care delivery at home and promote the independent living for the elderly people. In order for robots to be more acceptable to older people, it is essential that they can be programmed to adapt to diverse backgrounds. The project will expand my capabilities and aims to reduce pressure on healthcare services. It also has the potential to boost independence, reduce loneliness, and improve the quality of life among elderly people.
Pepper, how have you been helping Middlesex's outreach work?
I also play a major role in Middlesex University's STEM outreach activity. For example, in September, I worked alongside 94 Middlesex University staff and students at the New Scientist Live exhibition. I met hundreds of young people there and helped to get them excited about the future technology and science. We also have an annual STEM festival on campus for students, parents, and the whole community. At Middlesex, we put a lot of effort into engaging our students with their discipline in an authentic way. We give them the opportunity to translate their work to a wider public through STEM outreach work.
What is the role for humans in the fourth industrial revolution?
Robots will have an important role to play, but we will always need the soft skills that are unique to humans to sense, make, and drive value from technology. As technologies fuse and are used in ways that were not envisaged before, a new way of thinking is needed by tomorrow's workers. We will need people who can spot ideas and think across traditional sector divides to drive value from technological innovation.
How can robots help students learn in the classroom?
At Middlesex University, I work closely on projects with final year students from robotics, psychology, biomedicine, and education. Students program me to engage with audience in a range of environments and social settings. For example, Joanna and I are working together to adapt my interfaces to work with primary school children with or without special needs to develop their numeracy skills. Joanna can give you further information about this project.
Thank you, Pepper.
Thank you. I think we should give a round of applause to Pepper and the students.
No.
Thank you. Just have a start off very quickly with Lucy before I come on to William.
First of all, Pepper, I just want to say better than some of the ministers we've had before this. That's another point. Perhaps the university, some of the students, you could tell us about the work you've done working alongside Pepper and how you've developed your skills in doing that.
Okay. So Pepper is extracurricular to our course, but it's there for everyone to learn. We use her a lot, like it said, for our events, so STEM festivals, New Scientist Live, World Skills Show, in a way to just promote STEM to the public, especially to children, because they're obviously very interested by Pepper. During the summer, I've been working on this project, so Pepper can start going to primary schools and teach little kids how to do simple maths, so just like counting 1 to 20, shapes, simple multiplication or simple summing, just to see if it's more interesting for children and if they're more interested in the subject when they have something completely new than just doing it with a teacher or doing it with games on the tablet. So yeah, we're going to test that very soon, but I've tested it with my cousins and they enjoyed it very much. So
Can I just ask you computer science students?
I'm
Nick
a
is.
computer science student. I'm in my third year, and Joanna's.
I'm studying robotics engineering. I'm in my third year too.
William.
Further to the rest of the panel, really. You're talking about the maths program that you're running in primary schools. Does that extend beyond computation to problem solving and critical thinking? And where are we up to in terms of the technology to achieve that?
So, technology is difficult because the term AI is when I started a long time ago in the computing industry, AI basically was used to mean anything that was too hard to do, really. So, for example, computer vision was artificial intelligence, speech recognition, speech synthesis, object recognition, all of the things that we now take for granted on our mobile phones was all AI. So it's a moving target. And I think one of the things that often people forget is that AI isn't something that is going to happen. It's something that will develop because we'll constantly rename something AI when we want it to happen. And I think the comment was made in the earlier panel about will we still need computer science? Well, that's a very interesting question because I think of all the subjects, computer science is probably the one that will go on forever because the more imagination you have, the more things you think to do with computing and the more computing changes. So in terms of where we are with the technology, what can we do with Pepper in a school? There's all sorts of areas where we could work. A lot of it relates to what sensors we have, what sort of things we want to do, how invasive we want to be. So we could, for example, start using brain-computer interaction to collect data. Do we want to do that? I'm not sure. That may be a step too far. I think there's a whole rich tapestry out there of things we could do. What we do, what we'll end up doing, I think quite rightly should be driven by educationalists and teachers.
So with that in mind, are there any particular skills that those teachers need to develop?
So I think that teachers, more than anything, I put my cards on the table. I started my career as a maths teacher, so I've been there and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think that the point about the skills that teachers need, I think, going forward will be the same skills that the students need, which is agility, flexibility, etc. And I think they need a framework within they can do those things.
Would any other members of the panel wish to add to that?
Just to, some time ago I was asked to go to a college in North London and talk about integration, differentiation to a group of youngsters who could not care less about maths and just to motivate them. And I thought it had been 20 years since I studied those, and to be honest with you, I couldn't even spell those, let alone talk about them. So I said, can I just do it my own way? And we took some equipment, and the equipment runs on compressed air. We had to look at force and an area and pressure. And the fact that on a working equipment we could relate these three together and actually show that in order for this machine to work, you have to work out the force, the pressure, you have to work out the area of the circle. And then they had to look at pi r squared. Majority of them could not even raise it to the power of 2. And then they realized that obviously that's a skill that it. So what I'm saying is basically we managed. What we did was we put maths into context of an industrial example, and then within that they have to look at percentages. Again, none of them could do it. But the fact that it was there, they could feel it, they could touch it. It was a real example. It made a massive difference, and we went from not having any interest at the beginning to almost not being able to ask them to leave.
So does that take it beyond a gimmick, perhaps? If you were to say, not just a means of engaging students, is there a deeper level of learning to be had from it?
Yes, I would say. I mean, if we could, there's a lot of subjects. If we could make them practical and show the students that what are we getting at, and also simplify it. then there will be a lot of mileage in that. Thank you.
I think there's just a quick follow-up on that.
Yeah.
There's a really important point about Pepper and other devices and gimmicks, and I'm happy with the word gimmick, but the notion of embodied learning and the work that people like Papert, Montessori, tactile learning is an area which is now very, very interesting, because modern technology allows us to do things which are tactile with sensory feedback in ways which 25, 30 years ago were quite tricky when Papert first suggested them.
So give us an example of how that would work in practice with students.
Okay, so for me, and I think for the way we work at Middlesex, but we take the problem as prime. The problem is where the interesting learning will take place. So we work from problems. We want students to be able to relate to problems. So what Papert did with mathematics, for example, was to say, well, rather than mathematics being abstract up here, let's put the student in the place of mathematics. So shape becomes something that you walk around, something that you touch, something that you move around. So with our maths students, for example, we do an awful lot of model building with real physical models to help them understand multidimensional spaces. So that tactile notion, the ability to take something, touch it, sense it, feel it, is really important. So what Pepper does, thank you Pepper, apart from having face recognition so it will engage, it will turn and look at you, is it allows us to say there's software in there. So for many people, computing is something you do at a keyboard with a screen. For our students, I hope that isn't the model at all. Computing isn't about typing things on a keyboard and having a screen. It's about your driverless car, your fridge, your shopping system, Google, your phone, your camera. And I think with the fourth industrial revolution, we're working very closely with Festo and Siemens. It is about putting productivity up into the cloud. What does that mean? We haven't really worked that out yet. But it's...
That approach, I mean, you say it in a really eloquent way, and that is affirming and celebrating to the summary, but it seems at odds with the social policy running throughout our curriculum, primary to HE, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, I have to say, I struggle with things like removal of practical work in science as a decision to help people do practical science in industry.
Yeah.
Do you think our A-level system is too narrow to, and now you should have possibly have a baccalaureate at the age of 18 where you would move GCSEs to doing them at 18 and have science, creative, everyone should do all subjects in essence, all the...
I wrestle with this because I think there is a role for disciplines, there is a role for subjects, but equally going forward, I think you have to ask whether disciplines still exist going forward. What is the distinction between neuroscience and biomedical science and mathematics? The genomics project is largely a lot of very clever mathematicians and computer science working with biologists and web scientists to do very interesting things. And I'm not sure we help students to understand the world if we go, do that, do that, do that, don't do that, and do a 3-hour exam.
So just to be clear, I mean, earlier when we were talking about computer science, I didn't mean that computer science would be obsolete. I meant the current curriculum, it's so fast-moving, and how do we do that? So just to be clear, I mean, your view as a university is that the direction of travel of our curriculum into very strongly academic, rote learning, knowledge-based individual disciplines is the wrong direction of travel to meet the AI challenge?
For me, yes, absolutely. That doesn't mean there isn't a role for people who are very clever intellectually as well.
Yeah.
But it certainly isn't, for me, the overarching paradigm that works.
And some people have said to me about AI that actually what we need is not so much more programmers and more people who are computer literate, but those that have got the creative skills, the kind of psychology know-how to sort of bring that into the mix about how AI can be better absorbed and
but it's not an either or. You need that spectrum of skills.
Yeah.
So yes, you need your computer programmers to understand psychology.
Yeah.
Take cybersecurity as a classic example. If you take cybersecurity as a purely technical discipline, you develop wonderful systems that forget the fact that most people still put their passwords on a post-it on the fridge door. And if you do that, you're not tackling security. But
So you mentioned the baccalaureate. I came to the UK in 1983 as a youngster, and I came from a background of doing 12 or 14 subjects in one go to having to choose 3, which at the time was A-levels. Sorry, still is A-levels. But then I was introduced to baccalaureate, which made life much easier for me because I managed to do science on one side and then business, economics, and languages on the other. And it was a nice enriched balance of different subjects. And funny enough, both my children ended up doing baccalaureate, nothing to do with me, but and they've done quite well out of it. Again, because of the range of the subjects available to them, and that in the context of Industry 4 is very relevant because we're now talking about a technology that cuts across many disciplines, not just engineering. We're talking about IT, business, you name it. It has an impact on that.
Just finally, before I pass over to my colleague, would you include that expansion at university as well? So rather than just doing, as I did, for example, just a politics degree, would you say that degrees should have much wider subjects, that somebody may be able to concentrate on a particular subject, but they would have to do the other ones where there was a deficit in?
So I think I'll turn that model around and say, why should a university decide, or even a society decide, what someone should be taught? What we should look at are what problems do we need to solve. So if, for example, politicians need to solve complex big data problems, then I would argue that politicians probably need to do some data science. And that should come out of the problem. It shouldn't be, I did a politics degree and I have nothing against, I have a history degree as well as a maths degree, so I do have some sympathy with these various subjects, but where you can see the synergies. And I think as you get older, you start to see that history for me is about making sense of quite complex data. It actually isn't that different to computer science in many ways. It's about making sense of data in complicated scenarios. And I think that's what we need people to start doing at a much younger age, and what hopefully our students start to do.
Thelma.
Could I just take us back to the classroom and the role of Pepper in that as a former teacher? And it goes without saying that I know for every primary child, Pepper would be a massive hit. But we talked in the earlier session about the barriers to the use of AI for professionals. So I'm put myself back in that classroom as a teacher with Pepper in the morning, 34 children, differentiation, planning, preparation, all of that. What skills will I need to have as a teacher to be able to work and use and deploy Pepper for the best for the children and for the delivery of the curriculum? So can I ask Nicholas and Joanna how you see the teachers, or what barriers will teachers have to overcome, or what will they need to know and learn to be able to deploy so Pepper doesn't become a toy?
Mm-hmm. So the way I did this project is that Pepper is pretty much independent, so she wouldn't need much guidance, much touching, much anything. So the teacher is there obviously to help the students, and Pepper is just a tool for the teacher. So Pepper's not gonna substitute, or she's not gonna take the teacher's place. She's just another tool to make sure that the learning is interesting.
Could I just suggest though that tool could be another challenge for a teacher in the morning?
Oh yeah, it will be a challenge as it is anything that is new to any place. But that's why we're gonna do some tests and see how it works. But it would definitely be a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think if the children get really interested in the subject,
if it enriches.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it just becomes a flow between teacher, Pepper, or another robot.
Yeah.
It's to try to enrich the environment.
Any other professor?
I mean, I can see so many challenges, like classrooms with stairs in them, with steps in them, for example. Carpets, Pepper will fall over. The network almost certainly won't work because there'll be all those challenges. However, I would also say that possibly not in early years, but certainly by years 5 and 6, levels 5 and 6, I would predict there's probably going to be children in the room who say to the teacher, actually, I'll reprogram Pepper for you.
Yeah.
And I think that you'll find that the children become a resource, because whereas a teacher, and as I say, I would struggle now going into a classroom with Pepper because I would have to get my head around the technology. I don't do that. I have students that do that because they go, oh yes, it's just link it to my phone, you do this, you do that. And so I think Pepper will become part of the learning community if we allowed it to, if we allowed control to move from the teacher to the classroom a little bit more, with all the problems that poses.
Okay.
The teaching that Middlesex offer is obviously very much practical and skills based. So I've had the pleasure of recruiting 2 graduates from Middlesex, and 1 graduate turned assistant instructor. And technologically, they are at a different level, and especially with Industry 4, because we have many learning systems at different colleges and universities, and with these systems you need in-depth training, and unlike previous systems, if something plays up or goes wrong with these, you really need to know what technologies there is and how to tackle it, and these guys have been quite an asset, and they've taken our business to a different level, not just on the technological side, but also business-minded, their approach to customers. Because although I'm part of a large company, but I only have a team of 4, so when these guys go out to see a customer, they've got to be 100% focused and representative of the company.
Thank you. Emma.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. A couple of things just before I go on to the question. I was really interested with what you were saying, Professor Martin, about starting with the problem, because I was listening to a speech just the other night, and apologies if I say the name wrong, with Professor Sagata Vitre, if I said that right. And he was talking about how his solos, his self-organised learning environments, and how he uses computers and technology, and how he starts everything with the problem. And he was arguing that people, by using computers, can find the solution to any problem. And he posed a problem which I thought was incredible to a group of young people, which was, can you be in 2 places at the same time? Go and find out. And the answers that the children came back with were remarkable. So I find that really interesting. In the space of a few weeks, I've had 2 professors from different universities telling me the same thing, start with the problem. But I want to think particularly to Joanna and Nicholas, and I want to think what you think are the key skills that students will need in the future. And do you agree with the professor about you should be starting with the problem rather than individual subjects?
I can only really speak from experience. So as a computer science student at Middlesex, I've been taught to be as diverse and adaptive as I can be. So say in my second year, we learnt about the fundamentals of web development and such, but they expect you to be able to roam into wider territories than that, things like blockchain, AI, robotics, and I feel like I came to use that adaptiveness when I did my internship last year. I was introduced to a blockchain project, blockchain being something that I'd never done before, and I was just asked to figure it out, learn as much as I can, and try and be interactive in that project. And I ended up being fairly fundamental to that project. I ended up contributing quite a bit. Not because I knew blockchain already, but because I've been taught in a way that helped me quickly adapt to a new situation within what I understand. And yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
If I could just add a quick comment to that. One of the problems was Nick became so important to the company they didn't want him to come back and finish his degree, which of course would have ironically been a disaster for us because it would have hit our continuation. So I think there's an issue here around progression, and fortunately Nick has come back, but the company's still paying him and has offered him a job.
Working a day a week for that company, and I have an offer after university as well, because they were so happy with the fact that I worked less of an intern, more as a part of the team.
Yeah.
And they really appreciated that.
What about you, Jan? I mean, what are the key skills that you think students will need in the future?
Definitely problem solving, definitely being able to be autonomous, and as Nick said, being adaptive to the situation, because technology, I think the magic of technology is you never know what's to come. You never know what people are going to think of or develop. And with that, you never know the problems that are going to come. So we know that, as Nick said, if we don't know what's coming, we know that we have the skill to go there, explore, and be like, okay, we'll know how to do and how to solve this situation. So definitely, in my course, it's a lot of autonomy that we explore, a lot of autonomy. So in one of my projects, we had to create a self-balancing robot last year. And during the first year, we had some basic classes on the programming language that we were using. But obviously, as you can imagine, a self-balancing robot is something much more high and advanced. And with the basis, our teachers and lecturers just give us the wings to go and explore. But we have to do it by ourselves. Yeah. So we have to be very determined.
So the big question, I think, is how prepared were you at school for going to university and doing the course in the way that you've just described?
Could I add to that? Did your school ever encourage you to do these subjects and skills, technology in the way?
I didn't study here.
But you can still answer, that's fine. Explain where you did study.
I studied in Portugal, so I'm originally from Portugal. My high school was very academic as it can get, like mini quizzes every week, tests every other week, exams every final of the year or end of the term, with 9 books per exam, just kind of putting the knowledge in and forgetting everything the next day. And I relate much more to the teaching here because I actually learn, while in my high school I just kind of memorized everything, and then the next day I was like, cool, I don't need it anymore, I need my memory space to my other exam. And here, because we work on it ourselves, it really gets in there. You get the knowledge.
What about you, Nicholas?
So in my A-levels I did computing, and the final project that we had to do for the year, it was just you decide what you're going to do, give a decent proposal for it, and we'll allow you to do whatever. So that gave me one of the starting points for learning about exploring, and instead of just being given A, doing A, looking out, seeing what I could do, and then attempting to do something like that. So for A-level, that was a good experience of exploratory learning. But with things like maths, obviously there's a very strict curriculum, and as Joanna said, you'll learn something, remember it, and then regurgitate it, and more than likely to forget it afterwards because it's less of an experience, more of a task.
Yeah. So how could there have been a better way to prepare you for university? What would you recommend happens differently to better prepare you to work in the way you need to work?
I feel like rather than being prepared for university, I wouldn't say thrown in, but jumping into university and having different experiences was very good for me because it helped me realize, like, okay, life isn't just do task, it is learning new things and exploring, which I think has helped me in this next step, jumping from university into work.
Yeah.
So I can't think of anything that I would change about my A-levels as far as bridging between then and university. No.
I guess that's something. I mean, one of the challenges I think we face at Middlesex is the self-esteem of students. It's a real challenge for universities that perhaps are not in the elite Russell group, where the students tend to have a success behind them. They're coming in, they are successful, they think they're successful.
Yeah.
We're often working with groups of students that are coming in who have kind of built up this culture of, well, they're probably not going to succeed in things, so they don't really want to take risks.
Right.
And so we're very deliberate in throwing our students into quite difficult situations. I mean, we took 90 students to New Scientist Live, which is a big exhibition in Excel. This is Excel, isn't it? Yeah. And it literally is like coming in here, really. You know, we walked into this room and we saw the pit, and Joanna and I looked at each other, and I went, "It's your problem," because you know that pit is a trap for Pepper. So, but you take 90 students to a blank, huge arena, and we go, "Okay, there will be 80,000 visitors coming around in about 4 hours. Get on with it." And that really does build teamwork, but it also builds self-esteem, and that's a real challenge for us, and I think that's what we've addressed through our problem-based learning. Not every student gets there, and I must say, you know, not every student is a Joanna or a Nick, but all of our students, I think, we try to help them to get to the position where they go, yes, I can do that, yes, I can take risks, yes, I can try things. And I think that's perhaps the biggest cultural difficulty for us.
Brilliant, thank you. No, I was just going to ask, so if that is the case, and I agree with you, there is a problem with self-esteem for many, many students. What do you think should change in schools?
Well, I think some of the things that were said in the last session are really quite relevant, which is if you give a very sort of key performance indicator-based approach to education, where you're telling everyone that if you haven't done that, you've failed.
Yes.
So teachers are failing, schools are failing, pupils are failing, parents are failing, everybody's failing. It's not really surprising that everybody then looks at failure as a fairly common thing, as opposed to saying, oh, it's great, we failed, what have we learned?
Yes.
And so we haven't got that learning culture.
Would you change careers advice as well?
Sorry?
Would you change careers advice in schools?
The very first job I got given when I started teaching was to take a module on careers advice as a new graduate, and I think it's bonkers. I honestly don't know how careers teachers do it. I think careers teachers are in a very difficult position because I don't know what careers are looking forward. I don't think anyone can guess what the careers will be. I think we still have a model that says, you know, there is a career called engineer. I'm not sure there is anymore. I'm not sure these days that those careers are necessarily mapped out in that way.
Can I ask Joanna and Nicholas, there aren't enough students like you in our country doing what you're doing, particularly not enough women in STEM subjects. What would you do to change that?
I would do what Middlesex try and get lots of exposure. A lot of the students that come to events are, well, the majority of students that come to STEM are female, because we're trying to push the idea that women in STEM is something that we totally want. It's something that inequality needs to be chopped, because we perform just as well as each other. So I think the outreach and showing that it's not just blokes in a dark room, it's more of it's a wider experience than that.
It's a lot about breaking stereotypes. I think there's the big stereotype that engineers are middle-aged, semi-bald men working in a room without windows for hours straight, and engineering is just glasses and my laptop. And it's not. Engineering is so much more, and if we are able to show that as a university, and I have so many girls when we do these outreach programs coming to me and they're like, oh, but isn't it weird being just in the middle of boys, or why do you have any more girls? I'm like, well, I will do if you guys come study engineering. And they sound generally very, very interested in the matter. And just like Nick said, we perform the same. We are girls, we are just as good as boys are. It's just the stereotype and the stigma.
Well, I hope that many young people watching this will be inspired by both of you particularly. Could I just, we're going to conclude with a couple of important questions. What do you think, and this probably applies to both of you, needs to happen in terms of adults, in terms of reskilling and upskilling their occupations or their knowledge, given the arrival of the fourth industrial revolution? If I can just add to that, what do you think is going to be the impact for lower skilled adults, and what should we be doing about it?
So if I start, I mean, I think the lifelong learning question is quite a tricky one, and I think the terms mindset came up earlier. I think I would push it a little bit higher level than that and say I think it's cultural. I think that while we have an acceptance that ignorance is actually to be celebrated, and I get very tired as a mathematician hearing people on the media going, oh, well, I could never do maths, as if it's something great and we should all love it. Or, oh yes, well, I never wanted to be an engineer, you know, dirty stuff. And I think we have to somehow, I don't know how we do it, but I think if we could get a culture that said, well, of course you carry on learning. And some countries do have that, I think, where the idea that you carry on learning all your life is not something that sets you apart and makes you a bit geeky and nerdy. It's just obvious. Whether what you're learning is parenting skills, whether what you're learning is grandparenting skills, which I'm discovering are very different to parenting skills, whether what you're learning is how to communicate with people across different generations, different cultures. We have a very diverse student body. I've learned so much from working out how I teach Chinese students and Indian students and Portuguese students all in the same room. Nothing prepared me for that in my teacher training. So I think that's the primary thing we need to change. I think if we could do that, then I think we would develop a hunger for lifelong learning and we could embed it and people would embrace it. I think if we kind of have it as a you need to be retrained because you're not good enough to do what you do, that's your problem, I think we're never going to win. What was the second question you asked?
About social disadvantage in terms of...
Yeah, I think that's a really difficult one because I think it's far from obvious that the jobs that we'll lose will be the jobs at the bottom of the tree, so to speak. I hate that term, but partly because of economic questions. There are some jobs, it's simply not worth putting a computer in to do a job that you can take someone on a minimum wage on a 0 hours contract to do. It's cheaper to keep a person to do it. So I think we haven't really understood what technology will change. I mean, it's quite likely, for example, it'll be brain surgery might be an area.
Some things that I've read suggest that 1 million jobs at McDonald's might go worldwide, and even now it's not just the service, but it's the burgers that can be made by artificial intelligence. So
yes, that is, and that's perfectly possible. The question is, will McDonald's invest in the infrastructure and the technology to do that, or will they perpetuate? And I think I'm not sure which is the better outcome, to be honest. Which is
for us, obviously, the very nature of Industry 4, because it's very much evolving, and we're not quite there yet with a lot of technology. So it comes down to lifelong learning, whether it's for or upskilling of the existing workforce. But it requires a close collaboration between FE and HE in terms of using the right technicians, engineers, and one of the obviously great institutes to bring in young graduates for this are the UTCs, which we are very supportive of. I mean, I have the pleasure of being a governor at UTC Sheffield, which is one of the very successful ones. And it is unfortunate that the trend now is to just say how bad they are, but I'm 100% against those reports. It's also, we are a sponsor of WorldSkills UK, which you are obviously very familiar with. That is an ideal platform venue to get students and teachers involved with. I do a lot of STEM events. We go to a lot of exhibitions. It's not so difficult with primary kids and their teachers because by their very nature they just love asking questions. In fact, they like to outdo each other and asking questions, and the teacher goes along with that, and it's just so rewarding to talk to them. You come to secondary schools, and it's just the first person to walk away is the teacher because he's shy to ask a question in case he is perceived as not knowing the latest technology. And then with that, students all disperse. At the skills show, I mean, we get about some 80,000 students who walk through NEC over a 3-day period. For a lot of them, there is no, if they come from a college, yes, they're fine. If they come from the UTCs, they seem to have an agenda to what to look for. But if they come from schools, it's just like half of them are just there for, it's just a day out. But if the teacher spends some time with them to say, when we go there, these are the, I mean, you've got all these large employers there. I mean, it's not a joke to have BAE Systems, Jaguar Land Rover, you name it, they're there. These are the giants of industry. I mean, go and talk to them. Go and find out what are the latest skills, what you need to do, what are the job opportunities. So there should be some mechanism that these youngsters, they come back with with some valuable data, and unfortunately, it's not there.
First of all, thank you to the humans on the panel, especially the students. As I understand it, it's the first time that we've ever had a non-human appear at our select committee, although there may be a lot of people in the media who might argue otherwise. But I thank you for coming today, Pepper.
Thank you very much for an interesting discussion and for the opportunity to give evidence to the committee today.
Thank you. And very well done to Middlesex. It's a wonderful university. Well done.
Education Committee, 16th of October, Thatcher Room. 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 Education Committee, 16th